Hi, I'm Eric Lubau, and welcome to Beyond the Belt. This is a conversation with John Ethier, a black belt out of Ontario, Canada. John is a trained conductor for the Canadian Railroad. He runs a small fitness business and has a passion for Gothic architecture. We also had a great conversation about ADHD, dyslexia, and how to overcome learning disabilities in Jiu-Jitsu and life. I hope you enjoy our chat. Welcome, John. Tell me, what was it like for you to get your black belt?
It was probably the best day of my life. It was something that I never thought I'd achieve, like most black belts, obviously, but it was just, I wasn't really expecting it. I was only a two-stripe brown belt at the time, and my professor just surprised me with my black belt that day. I thought I was probably going to get a couple more stripes, but it made me tear up. I actually had a couple tears, cried a little bit. Got a big old hug from my professor and my buddy who also got his black belt that day. We all shared some tears. Being my professor's first black belt, one of the first two, obviously. He was a little emotional as well, so it was a great day all around. But yeah, getting a black belt is probably the hardest thing I've ever done. Obviously, everybody will tell you that, but it is the most rewarding thing I've ever done as well.
Do you feel any different, or did you feel any different when you got when it was put around your waist? Did it happen after the first roll? What was your like uh-oh moment? Or did you even have an uh-oh moment?
The oh moment was like, oh, people are gonna start asking me questions now. I'm gonna have to answer them honestly. Like I can't get by as a spunky purple belt or a broken brown belt. I gotta have some knowledge. So it was kind of more of like a wave of oh, crap is what it was. But then as soon as that wave went, it was like all right, I'm here. I've achieved what I wanted to achieve. Let's get started on the next journey, which is continuing to get degrees and continuing with the jiu-jitsu journey.
Did your roles feel any different for you? Obviously, people were, trying to take out the target on your back, but did you feel different? Did you do different things?
No, not really. I still played the exact same game. I still rolled the same way. The intensity got a little bit more. White belts were trying to kill me even more now, which was hilarious. But no, it just after the first roll, it really set in like, hey, you're here, kid. Like you started off at a gym in the middle of Ontario after doing no athletic sports, and now you are at one of the top levels that you can be in your martial art. So it changed a lot of things that first role. Like it changed a lot of things for me. It continues changing things for me.
How did you get into it?
So that's actually one of my favorite stories I tell people. So I was a very obese teenager. At 16, I weighed 300 pounds. Uh, Not a single like ounce of muscle on me whatsoever. The only sport I played was badminton because you just had to hit the birdie and like you barely moved. But then I remember going to a buddy's house and watching UFC 100. And I know everybody who watched that remembers the Michael Bisping Dan Henderson fight where Dan Henderson knocked out Michael Bisping. It was a moment. I'm like,
Yeah,
I want to do
giant overhand right.
that H bomb is legendary. Like anybody that's anybody that wants to see something great, and I love Michael Bisping. Don't get me wrong, but like that is the greatest knockout I've ever seen. I'll die on the hill with that one. But being 300 pounds, and that night Brock Lesnar fought too, I'm like, I can't fight that guy. He's huge. So I started running. And running, I'm like, all right, I'm going to become a fighter. I got myself some UFC gloves. I got myself a heavy bag. And then my family moved to London, Ontario, where I am right now in 2010. And I found my first gym there. And so I'm going to become an MMA fighter. Like, and after a couple kickboxing sessions, I didn't like getting punched in the face. But grappling just and ever since then, grappling's been the number one sport in my life. Jiu-jitsu, wrestling, all grappling sports. I still don't like being punched in the face that much, but it's because of UFC 100 and Dan Henderson that I started jiu-jitsu. So thank you to those two.
To be honest, I mostly stopped the striking arts because I got a little tired of getting punched in the face. So I absolutely feel you there. And I did many, many years of striking to get to that point, and then now I just if I get punched in the face, it's usually an accident. So I'm happy.
Oh, it's the same. Like I get the occasional elbow, the occasional smack. I do some MMA still here and there, but like mostly just because I want to actually do a fight just to say I did a fight. So, but being punched in the face still sucks. It's my least favorite thing about the martial arts. But you know exactly what I'm talking about, so I don't really have to explain.
I do. So what motivates you to keep training? Is it that fight, or is there something else that's your driving?
It's So with jujitsu, I find it helps calm me. I'm pretty sure everybody can tell you that. It's the fact that I can have the worst day of my life and I'll go to training. I'll even have the worst training session of my life. But for the 15 minutes or 20 minutes in the car ride home, everything just makes sense. Like, yeah, it was a crappy day, but I'm much better now because like I got my sweat on. Yeah, I tapped to that arm bar that I shouldn't have tapped to, but you know what? Like that's okay because I got to get out and train. So the thing that keeps me driving is just trying to find my own happiness and therapy through jujitsu. It's uh it's a really surreal feeling, especially for the people that do jujitsu. Like you could probably attest to this, that you just feel better. Yeah, the fight obviously. I still compete. I'm just getting over a wrist injury, but I'm probably going to sign up for local ADCC just because I want to continue testing myself. But at the end of the day, it's all about making myself a better person and happier. And so that's my driving force.
When did that kind of realization happen for you? Because you said you got on the mat to lose weight, maybe to have a fight, and like you just kind of enjoyed the journey. It sounds like, but if you're leaning on jujitsu for mental health, therapy, happiness, that switch must have flipped, or that self awareness happened at some point. Like, what was that moment for you?
It actually happened right away. So when my family moved down south, I started a construction job, and I was working 12-hour days, and I couldn't get to jujitsu. I was doing jujitsu like every day for the first month and a half I was here. Then I stopped, and I can only train once a week. But I noticed my mood and everything was started going down. And then when I got my Saturday training session in, went right back up. You probably know yourself, like you said, you did some striking, like you started the same way well, I don't know if you started the same way that I did, but it's just you get that realization either right away or very fast, I found. So yeah. Like how'd you find jujitsu?
I So I started out, I've been doing martial arts literally my entire life. My parents stuck me into Taekwondo when I was a kid, and I just did it because I kind of had to. And then I stopped Taekwondo, and I was getting bullied really badly when I got into high school. Like this guy was like, I was a little overweight, and this guy in the locker next to me just used to like push me around, push me into the locker, dump me in the trash can, and then told me, I will stop bullying you if you would um, join the wrestling team, because he was on the wrestling team. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a good trade. But I didn't realize that that just meant he was going to be like allowed to bully me, because it was going to be on the mat and he could just kick my ass and everybody would be like, yes, good job. And I just wasn't smart enough at that time to figure it out. And I wrestled for 4 years of high school, lost a bunch of weight, got some confidence, was decent, and then became an All-American when I got to college. And then when I got out of college, I was like, I need to keep doing some physical activity, because the army is not really a fun physical activity kind of thing. After I got out of the army, my friend was like, you should try MMA. I did MMA for a while, found that the MMA school that I was in was great, but didn't teach much jujitsu. And somebody was like, I was living in New York City at the time, and somebody was like, hey, there's this like a school called Marcelo Garcia, like right around the corner from here. Like we should go check it out. And I'm like, I don't need another school. And he was like, no, 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 but this guy is like really good. This is like Michael Jordan of jujitsu. And I was like, well, I'm not that good, so what does it matter? And then I went and I was like, oh, nope, I get it. This is now my thing. And I left the MMA school, and I've been doing jujitsu ever since.
So you got to train with the GOAT. Like I tell everybody that starts now, that starts all, Marcelo Garcia is the GOAT. So like, how was that? Because I've always wanted to train with him, but I know he moved recently, so New York's no longer his place. But like, that's always been a dream of mine, is to train with Marcelo.
I was Yeah, I was incredibly lucky. I didn't know how lucky I was. I was training with Marcelo Garcia. I was training with Bernardo Faria before he was the BJJ Fanatics guy. And
Yeah.
everybody that came through like Marcelo Garcia Academy, and even some of the like people who are like quote unquote no names there are like absolutely incredible. Like the Matthias Denizes and Marcus Tinoco, and I don't even remember everybody's name, Scott and Joel and Jimmy. And like, I just remember thinking, these guys, there's so much incredible talent. And then Damian Maia would come through, and then all of these other UFC fighters would come through. And it was like, I didn't understand how lucky I was at the time until I left and was like, oh, I'm not getting to train with the best in the world all the time. And it's humbling in a way that I don't think most people understand, because you're like, oh, my coach is going to kick my butt because he's my coach. And then you're like, yes. And then you roll with Marcelo Garcia and you're like, oh, this is a different level of I have no ability to win here. Actually, well, I have a really funny story about this. Was like I rolled with Marcelo one time, and I just had a really, really bad day, and it was just I was like a fresh blue belt, and it just didn't go well. Of course, it didn't go well because he's Marcelo. And then the next day in the class, I was like, "Hey, can we roll again? Yesterday, I just had a really bad day, and I think I could do better." And he just like looked at me and smiled, and he goes, "How much better do you really think you can do?" And not like in a mean way, just kind of like, really, really. And he just a big goofy smile. He got on and he's like, yeah, of course, let's do it. And I was like, man, this guy is such another level of skill and humility, and he still has a sense of humor. And then we rolled, and he still gave me I didn't, of course, do well, and he just gave me a bunch of feedback, and he was like, here, do this, use your legs more, like rely on this a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And it was like such a beautiful experience to be, given advice by somebody who's like, I will not have to break a sweat, but yeah, let's do this because it's important to you. And I try to bring that to the jiu-jitsu that I have and I show people.
Yeah. Like when I used to live in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and there was one of the very first submission cards there, like submission only fight cards, and a bunch of Marcelo guys came up. Like there was Munch, Jonathan, I can't remember his last name, but like they just and there was really good grapplers out in Nova Scotia. Like, but it was just as soon as I saw them, I'm like, oh my god, like this is just a whole nother level. So like you getting to train with those guys, I can understand why as soon as you left, it was kind of like, really, yeah. But no, I've always said this, like you can find good training everywhere. There's always a stud at a gym. Like there's always somebody that's really really good. But finding good instruction is the hardest thing to find. And like it sounds like when you were training with Marcelo, giving you feedback on your rolls, like that's just worth its weight in gold, right?
To be honest, Paul Schreiner, one of the black belts that I don't know if he still teaches there. I think he does. He's one of the best instructors I've ever been to classes from. And I've been to like 150 gyms, been to jiu-jitsu camps, taken classes from 300-400 instructors at least, and Paul is still probably, if he's in the top 3, and that I think is where I got really lucky with my instruction when I was at Marcelo's. Like everyone else was great rolls, like lots of very technical stuff, but Paul to me was one of the most valuable things for my jiu-jitsu journey, and I feel very lucky that I got to witness instruction like that, and I try to model some of my instruction after that, although it's not a contest.
That's absolutely amazing. But like at least you understand like you can go that way, right?
Yeah,
it's really cool to hear people talk about like how their instructors throughout their career change, like helped them get to where they are and how they teach and how they roll and how they learn. Like it's very interesting. I find like you're saying Paul was one of the top 3 instructors you ever had, and like I know a couple of Globetrotter instructors and they're amazing. So like every instructor that I've ever had, I consider amazing. But like it's just really cool to hear other people's perspectives on it. So
yeah, there's levels to jiu-jitsu, to instruction. One of the things I really want to ask you about is like we talked before this about you having ADHD, and I think that like a good instructor can sometimes recognize when somebody's learning style is different, when they have challenges. Like what kind of role did ADD, and you also, I believe, said dyslexia, what kind of role did that have on like your ability to learn, retain information, and get to the level you're at in jiu-jitsu?
So I was very lucky. Like when I was out in Halifax, one of the instructors, Steve, is also ADD, and so he kind of understood how to teach that way. When it comes to retaining a technique and like situations and whatnot, I always found that the day of, like if it wasn't like quick, short, easy, I couldn't do it. And then I could be drilling it or I'd be trying to like test out the technique. I wouldn't get it. I'd go home and have to sleep on it. And then the next day it made sense. So for me, it was just like, if it was too much talking, if it was just too much back and forth, like, hey, I'm just like, I'm staring directly at you, I'm watching, and all of a sudden my mind goes like this. It's like I lost it. Drilling's the same way. I could drill it perfectly the first time, second time, 80%, all that. But I always found when it came to me learning my techniques and like learning the way that I know how to roll now, it all comes from sleeping on it. So I just need like a day, and then my mind processes everything.
So, what adjustments have you made as a result of that? Like, I understand you need to sleep on it, but I mean, you probably have
Yeah.
some like in class adjustments that you're like, oh, I know I need to keep this in mind.
I'll get my partner to drill it on me first, try it on me first, so that way that I can feel how it's supposed to feel. I'll try and break it down into little pieces. Like, for example, going for like a deep half sweep. I'll just get to deep half. Okay, that's enough for me. You try it. Okay, they do the entire thing. I get the deep half again. I get the second part of the sweep. Okay, cool. Done that. And on the third time, because I just break it down in little pieces, just so I can have enough that I'm not overstimulated with it. And with being with dyslexia, like it's hard for me to even read and understand sometimes. So when I actually have someone do it on me or someone show me, I'll be like, okay, can you just do it first? Like it's easier this way, and then I'll pick up on it. Like long complex sequences, like knee cut pass to knee on belly to back take to arm bar. I need to sleep on that. But if it's just like knee cut pass, do it a couple times on me and I'll understand it.
Have you ever had any problems with training partners that you're unfamiliar with when you're like, hey, I need to do this a little bit differently?
No, never. Everybody like jiu-jitsu is the humbling sport, right? Everybody's there to help each other learn. There have been a few people that have been like, I don't understand why you need to do this, but that's okay. Because I'm like, oh, that's all right, man. Like, you just keep on doing it, and then I'll ask somebody at the end of class. It's like, not hard to accommodate people because we have people from all walks of life.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I feel like one of the things that I notice some of the newer students or like younger developmentally kind of students get into is they're worried about asking for their concessions. So like, hey, I need to do this differently, or can you roll a little lighter with me or whatever, because they're like, oh, I don't want to be that person. So I was sort of flagging it because I was curious if you ever ran into issues or if you just always are like, hey, I need this thing. Can we, work within my needs here?
Like, so there has been times where I've been too like nervous to ask. But it's at the end of the day, like it's your training as well. So you have to like if you're going to talk to your younger students that are afraid of asking these questions, be like, hey, it's your training session too. Like you need to make sure that you understand it. And that's kind of what I told myself is like, I'm also here to learn. It's great that everybody else is learning, but you need to learn. So that's when I started getting a little bit more confidence in myself. So it was a big confidence issue at first, but then after I understood what I needed to do, then it was easier.
I was going to ask if there was anything that you really took away from jujitsu, like off the mats. It sounds like confidence was going to be the answer to that question. Is there anything else, or is confidence like a big deal for your life?
Confidence is a big one. I still to this day have lack confidence, but confidence is one. Being relaxed in public is one. Like I used to get pretty like bad social anxiety. I never realized it till I was an adult. I hated being in like Walmart and stuff as a kid or like in big crowds. But now it's like, okay, I can get through this. This is easy. Like I've had a 300-pound person try and like smother me with their chest. If that's not claustrophobic or compressing it anyway, then you can handle a crowd of Walmart. So confidence, being relaxed in public is one, and helping me actually learn. Back to the ADD and dyslexia, like I have a new way of learning now. In school, growing up in a very small town in Northern Ontario, we unfortunately didn't have the resources for like independent learning studies. But now with Jiu-Jitsu, I've taught myself how to learn. So like if I can't understand something, I'll sleep on it, or I'll do a small sentence here, two sentences here, a sentence here, just so I understand what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of takes me to like the next topic that I wanted to discuss with you is that you drive trains professionally, which is not a thing I hear people talk about a lot. Like, what was the education for that? And then I want to swing back around to the, dyslexia and learning thing. But what was the education like for driving trains?
Funny enough, it's actually an apprenticeship. It's a trade. So it's like being a welder, mechanic, plumber. So you go to one of the companies in Canada. There's many. We have two big ones, Canadian National and Canadian Pacific. They train you to be a conductor, which is essentially like the apprentice. You learn how to put the train together, take it apart, fix it, do stuff for customers, and then after a certain amount of probation period, you become a locomotive engineer, which is what I am now. And that's the person that operates the train. And once you're up there, you're in charge of like all the air gauges, the fuel, how to make sure the train doesn't break apart, stuff like that. Then so really and truly, it was an on-the-job learning experience. There was a 6-week class that was kind of hard for me at first, and then I actually failed my first test to become certified, but then I went back, studied my butt off, and I passed the second time. And then during my trainee apprentice phase, I almost got kicked out of the program because I wasn't learning. And then I finally realized, like, hey, you need to slow down, ask questions, and then you'll figure it out. And there was a guy that worked with us. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. His name was Dave, and he even told me I got the most improved player award. So just by slowing things down and really learning how to teach myself. That I hope that comes back.
And that's something that you feel like Jiu-Jitsu taught you.
Exactly, right? It was, if I did, during my trainee phase, I didn't have Jiu-Jitsu, so I didn't have that outlet. I couldn't go to the gym just because like I was on all different types of shifts. Wasn't a lot of morning classes, wasn't a lot of afternoon classes at the time. So I had to essentially teach myself again what Jiu-Jitsu taught me at the time. So it was hard to do without Jiu-Jitsu, but I eventually got through, and now it's been my career for the past past 13 years. So I mean,
What's a typical day like for you?
so right now I'm on a certain schedule where because I live an hour and a half away from my job site, I'll wake up at 2:30 in the morning. I'll drive to Toronto for 4:50 in the morning. Then I will take a train from Toronto to Windsor, Ontario, which is right near Detroit. That takes about 8 hours. I'll spend the day in Windsor, stay overnight, and then like again, I was up at 2 this morning. Took the train back to Toronto, drove back home. So it's usually about 36 hours away from my home. So it's not really a day, it's like a 2-day thing. It's yeah, and anything can go wrong. Like I've had trains break down on me. We had a very bad winter storm a couple of years ago that halted all trains, so people were stuck. It was just anything can happen at any time.
What's like the craziest thing that's happened while you've been on shift? Or the most interesting, whatever you feel like talking about.
Craziest or most interesting thing, like I said, I've actually gotten a train stuck in a snowbank before. It was back in my time in Halifax, and this was a big train. We used tonnage in feet. I think it was 6,000 feet, like 5 to 6,000 tons. It was considered a small train at the time, but we just got hit with a giant blizzard. Then there was a blizzard every Wednesday that winter, I swear, and we actually got stuck in the snowbank. And so we had to leave our train there. It was in something called a siding, so a side track where you let other trains go by, and we got stuck in the snow. I've never seen anything like it in my life. The snow went from being about I don't know, this deep to up to my neck in a matter of 6 hours. Most insane snowfall I've ever seen. So we couldn't move it, so we had to leave it there. That was the most insane thing that's ever happened to me, is just getting stuck in snow.
Is there like a punishment for having to leave a train, or are they like, no, we understand you did the right thing?
They will tell us to leave the train or not. It's if we can't like, there's no punishment. If you have to leave the train, you tell them like, hey, we can't move it. They'll be like, okay, just make sure you got all your brakes on. Make sure that you put some like other brakes on called handbrakes. Kind of like when you're driving a manual, you put your handbrake on. So you got to put about a couple handbrakes on so it doesn't roll away. It wasn't going anywhere in this snowbank, but you always got to be safe. There's no punishment because most of the time like you're getting told what to do by your superiors, and most of the time they're right. So
Fair enough.
yeah,
Is this like a regularly stressful job?
it can be. So right now I work in passenger service, and our number one concern always, besides safety, is our passengers. So when you end up being an hour late, you feel bad for the customers. Like they're like, yeah, I missed my connection. Now I'm gonna miss my flight or something like that. So there's stress with that. There's other stresses out there like possibilities of breaking down, possibilities of like trees being down. We've been blocked by trees before. Just regular stresses that not a lot of people actually think about that will actually happen. But at the end of the day, like if you get it done your shift within the amount of time that you're allowed, the stress just goes away instantly.
Nice. One of the things you had mentioned to me, like while we were talking beforehand, was that you have this opinion that, and it might be factual, I don't know, that railways hold economies hostage. And I
That's
did a bunch of reading on this, and I'm really curious to hear your take on this.
Well, I'm just going to use the American example right now. Like I know the American locomotive engineers like myself, they put in their strike notice. There was a big contract issue. They were trying to get stuff taken away. They were being put on certain point systems that if you take, like I said, if you have to call in sick, like you get 20 points and you have to work 2 months to get those 20 points back. I don't know, it's American, but it got so bad that Congress actually stepped in and said you guys aren't allowed to strike. It's they can hold the economy hostage. Like trains do run the economy. An investor told me one time, if you look at the railway stocks, if they're doing good, the economy's doing good. So everything travels by rail, unless you're on the coast. It's kind of it's kind of a hard thing to talk about because again, like we need all our goods. I know you live in Germany, like you need your passenger services because trains are amazing. But if you say, hey, we're not going to work anymore, that kind of just cripples everything. So it's kind of it's Tom's razor, right? Like you're on that fine edge where if you step one way, it's catastrophic. If you step the other, it's catastrophic. So I hope
Is
I
there
hope
like
it's
a
I
big
hope it's
difference
not just me.
between railways? Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is like, is there a big difference between the railways or the systems in Europe and Asia in North America?
Yes. So North America mostly relies on freight traffic, so cargo, customers and stuff like that, where passenger service is kind of second class. I don't want to say that. I don't know how else to say it, but it's like they rent the track from the freight companies. In the States, they have a couple laws, at least on the East Coast, where it's like they get priority or they have their own tracks. But I know in Europe and Asia, like passenger service has their own tracks. They're always on time. Everybody relies on it. Where here it's like we're kind of at we're kind of at the mercy, right? If a freight train says we got to go first, they get to go first. It's their tracks. Completely understandable. They own it. We just rent it. It's really cool. Like I haven't been to Europe yet, but I know as soon as I get there, and I am by no means a train buff. I just want to take the trains to see the difference. Yeah, it's all electric and magnets, and like within North America anyway, at least some areas still like it's a lot of diesel generators that power the train. So that's why it's really loud. It's just a big diesel. It's just a big diesel generator. Whereas in Europe and Asia, they have maglev trains, electric trains. So everything's powered different.
Do you see any of that stuff coming to North America, like more in a more like in a larger way?
Well, they just announced in Canada, actually, I believe it was this week or last week, that they're putting in a high-speed train between Toronto and Montreal, plus a couple other cities. Those are our two biggest cities besides Vancouver. So that's going to be really huge for us. Yeah. I don't know. I think the States has a couple like that, but I don't really. It's a giant infrastructure project, and you need to have their own area and stuff like that. It's way out of my realm of expertise, but I know that they just announced it, so that's really exciting for us. We're going to be up to the European standard soon, which is amazing. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's cool. So one of the other things I actually still wanted to get to is you also somehow have the time to run a fitness business. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's just a little side project. So I went to school for health, wellness, and fitness because being the obese kid I was, I thought becoming a personal trainer was going to help me. And so it was something when I joined the railway, I put on the back burner. And it wasn't until recently when a coworker of mine asked me to make him a program. And the light came on. It's like, hey, okay, let's try it. So I made him a program, and I found how I rekindled my love with it because I used to make programs all the time for myself. So now I just have a little side business. I make online. I'm an online coach, make programs for people, predominantly for jiu-jitsu athletes or MMA athletes. So that way, there, like, it's an expertise I know, and like the gym has been the second love of my life after jiu-jitsu. like they go hand in hand. Like I tell everybody I have two wives, Jiu-Jitsu and the gym. So, but yeah, no, it's something that I've been really enjoying lately, especially because it was my passion before I joined the railway. It was my career. So, um, I don't know. It's
What about the gym are you passionate about? Is it like more strength? Is it conditioning? Is it like the way that you move your body? What is your kind of focus?
it's so mine right now is actually becoming more functional. I used to be like a big power, like be big into powerlifting. I also wanted to be a bodybuilder. I also wanted to be a CrossFit athlete. And like this is back when I was younger, right? But uh, you got to focus on one thing. And right now, like because jujitsu is still number one in my life, and I want to be an athlete in jujitsu, I have to train like an athlete in jujitsu. So strength and conditioning, both of them are really good. The other thing about the gym is it also is like another way of meditating. You go in there, you put your headphones in. It's just you and the iron. There might be a class going on that you can hear over your headphones, but that's okay. You just it's just focusing, and it's humbling as well. It's like jujitsu. It's I don't know if you're a weightlifter at all or if you ever did any strength conditioning, but you know, like the oh God feeling. No, you never did it? No. So after like a hard sparring session, like you're sitting there on the ground, breathing heavy, it's you get that feeling. And that's something that I've always loved.
You said earlier that you had a bit of a wrist thing going on. Has that been a major issue for you like has injury been a major issue over the years?
Actually, no. So with me, I've only had a couple of minor injuries. Like this wrist is most recent. I think it's just a little bit of golfer's elbow. I don't know how I'd get golfer's elbow. I'm not a golfer. But with weight training, I found I've never been really injured. Like
Repetitive
I had
motion.
a little bit of a shoulder. Yeah, exactly. It just like it's right through here. I'm like, okay. I thought it was a fracture. I went and got an X-ray. The first doctor thought it was a fracture. Turns out it wasn't. It was just a previous chip. But sorry, there's a fire across the street. They got the firefighters over there. ADD.
That's okay. It happens.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Okay. So yeah, like I said, I've never actually really been injured. I had a small shoulder injury because I got thrown on my shoulder during a wrestling practice. It was a fireman's throw gone bad, as you know. Fireman's throws are either amazing or terrible. Depends on who does it. So that was one that I can remember. The other one I can remember is I popped my knee trying to calf slice somebody. I popped my own knee, calf slicing somebody else. Thanks.
Not how that's supposed to work, but yep.
Not at all. And those are the only two besides my wrist that I can remember. And I attribute that to lifting weights.
Okay, well, part of the reason I ask is because I like to talk to people about different ways that they've dealt with having to be off the mats. And so in your case, it wasn't due to injury, but you had to be off the mats for training, like school, for the apprenticeship. Like, how did you deal with that, and how did you deal with that forced time off?
So my journey in jiu-jitsu has actually been in stages. So I started off as a white belt, uh, went to school, took 3, 4 months off, came back and went like balls to the wall hard for another 6, 7 months. Competed, sorry, competed a lot. And then I moved out to Halifax where I had to do my apprenticeship. So I took another 6 months, a year off. Started back training with my buddy's gym. He owns it now, Maritime Jiu-Jitsu. It was Bushido Kai at the time. Got to purple belt there. So after the training and all that, I finally got back in the gym, made it all the way up to purple belt. I got the new job with the passenger rail, transferred back to Toronto. Didn't have a gym there until I found my professor's gym. And so it was another year off. And so in that time frame though, each time I took time off, I knew there was something missing. And so trying to deal with it, like the weight gym was one of them, but it was just trying to keep myself busy. And then as soon as I refound my love for jujitsu and whenever I restarted, like it was just like it was there. It was something that's meant to be with me. Like even during the pandemic, I had one training partner. We had some mats. We tried to follow all the social guidelines that they had at the time because nobody knew any different. So we just trained together one on one, right? But it was something that we were both not willing to give up was jujitsu. We didn't want another hiatus. Dealing with that is probably one of the harder things I've had to deal with. You get like, I don't want to say anxious, but you get antsy, you get like, I don't know how to describe it. You just know there's something missing. Like, have you ever had any major injuries where you've had to take time off?
Yeah, I've had a couple of them. I broke my leg skydiving in 2009. I had to have spinal surgery from a sparring session that went bad in
Ooh.
2013 or 2014, and I had to take about a year off from that. And it was really difficult. I really kind of desperately struggled for something that would be a similar outlet, not just a physical one, but also a mental one. And for me, that time off the mats was like where I kind of learned to center myself like outside of jujitsu. And I found that that is martial arts in general more than just jujitsu, but now it's just jujitsu. And it's like, it was a purpose for me. It was like being able to be centered, giving me a purpose of exercise and rooting me in reality. And I really had a hard time with those layoffs until I learned to be more at peace with myself and give myself a little grace, I think is probably the best word I could come up with for that. It's I've had a couple of them that are very difficult.
That sounds difficult. Like break your leg skydiving. Well, like congratulations, skydiving's scary as hell. So like, like good on you for that. The spiraling, that's wild. But I'm gonna say like if I ever get injured again, I'm gonna try and take your approach and get centered and find the grace in it because whenever I'm like out for a bit, I can't do that. And it's something that I like now that you've talked about it, I should finally figure it out. But no, that's a
It was
yeah,
super hard. It was like I needed a little bit of like I needed to give myself grace to like admit that it was hard because I felt like I was so at the time I felt like I was so in control and comfortable when I was training regularly, and then when I couldn't train, I kind of felt that antsy, like anxious. What am I doing with myself? What am I doing with my time? Feeling, and I had to first admit to myself like this is really hard to get through, and then I gave myself a little bit of grace, and I was like, okay, this is I can do this. I can deal with this. Not that it was easy, but I just had to find other occupations, like other things to keep my mind, my body busy while I was injured, while I was off the mat.
did you have any other hobbies that you like kind of jumped onto? Because like I had the gym, but like what about yourself?
I threw myself into work, which for my career paid off really well. Like I got myself the first injury where I broke my leg was where I really was decided I need to start building businesses myself. And so that was shortly after I came off that broken leg. I started my first company, and well, it was sort of co-founded my first tech company. I had done some stuff before, and then that second injury, I just threw myself into work because I had no other thing that I could do, and so I was just taking more meetings, doing more networking, doing more learning of new technologies, and it was incredibly helpful professionally, but a little bit sad that I struggled so much and had no other outlet. I'm just very fortunate that tech is such a financially valuable thing to know, and it ended up really working out in my benefit.
Yeah, honestly, like it's something that I wish I knew more about was like is being in the tech business. Like I'm just, like I said, I'm trying to be an online trainer and I'm trying to figure all this stuff out at 32. I wish I would have thrown myself into it when I was 18, like some of my coworkers at the time and my friends at the time. But how many businesses do you have? Like you just said, you started a couple, or
I've started a few businesses over the years. The one that I started at that point was a company called Simple Reach. We built social media and content analytics. Since then, I've helped start two med tech companies in the US. One's called MyMe, another one's called Health Hive. And I've just helped help CEOs build companies. And I still do executive coaching at this point for sort of, younger executives I didn't have any mentors growing up for technology, and I just made so many mistakes. And I really wish that more people had mentorship accessible to them. So I just try to put myself out there, and I do mentor a couple of executives to be like, hey, here's a bunch of things that I can be helpful with so you don't make 4-figure, 5-figure, 6-figure mistakes like I did. And hopefully this helps you in your life.
yeah. Yeah, you're right on the money where there's not a lot of mentors anymore, right? I was pretty lucky growing up that I had mentors for hard work, like my father, my uncles, and stuff like that. But yeah, you're right. There's no tech mentors out there. Like I said, I had one computer teacher, absolute genius of a man, but like all he did was teach us how to code to play video games. I don't know what he's doing nowadays. Fantastic guy, but like I wish we would
Everyone
would
has
have
their own kind of
listened
entry
more.
into using computers.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
and
pretty
that was
normal.
ours. We learned how to network. We learned how to network to play StarCraft. That was the best thing about it. And he'd
I
kick
mean,
our
that's kind
butts
of
in
fun.
fights. He'd beat us up. Beat us. He'd beat us every day, but like we tried.
You had also mentioned to me that you were like interested in Gothic architecture. Where did that come from?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. But ever since I was a kid, like I've loved old cathedrals, old buildings. Like one of my favorite things to do is I travel to Montreal quite often for work, and I'll actually just tour Montreal and go see like the old Catholic cathedrals, all the old churches, all old Montreal. Like that, I don't know where it came from. I don't know why, but I love the masonry. I love the stained glass. I love everything about it. I don't like being in churches because I'm terrified of ghosts and like ghosts are real to me. I don't care what everybody says, but I love just looking at them. That's one of my biggest bucket list things is going to Europe and seeing like the cathedrals of Germany, the cathedrals of France.
Have you ever considered like studying architecture a little more formally, or it's more just a hobby and a side passion for you?
Side passion, strictly because my math is terrible. I don't have the math for it, unfortunately. Numbers and me, we don't get along. Like I wish we could. I would love to be an architect or civil engineer when I actually tried to become a civil engineer, and like the one college I applied to looked at me and said, "Yeah, numbers aren't for you." So it is what it is. I've learned to live with it. So
I mean, at least they were honest, right?
they were nice about it. Like the rejection letter was really nice, but it was still a rejection letter. But yeah, that's it's
Yeah, that's
something that I
fair.
really wish
Sometimes
they
those
could
are
have done.
hard.
Yeah, I was big into Lego when I was a kid, and I think that's where it all started. And I just love building things with Lego. And yeah, just couldn't get the math for it. So
Do you still use Legos, or did you kind of give up on that?
but depends. Like yes, but I'll tell everybody no. Like I'll go out and buy one of the Star Wars Lego sets just to build it. And but if you ask me out in public,
You don't have
I
to
don't.
tell everybody no. That's it. I
There's
just
it's
recently went down to the mountains in Germany with a couple of friends, and we were hiking during the day. And in the evenings, they were like, they had brought a bunch of Legos and they were like building Legos in the evenings. And I thought that was like very wholesome and cool. That I was like, oh, that's kind of a sweet way for everyone to spend time together, is just playing with Legos.
see like that's the thing. I just wish I could have like a big bucket of Lego again, but it's now Lego's like super expensive. I don't tell everybody no, but it's like it's one of my hidden hobbies. I I try to keep like just keep some things for myself. I don't want people playing with my Lego.
That's fair.
You can blame that on my
I just don't
you can
think you
blame that
should
on my
hide it
younger
if you
cousins.
enjoy doing it. That was it.
Hey, you know what? You're absolutely right. I won't hide it no more. That's
All
yeah.
right.
There you go.
I'll count that
Thanks,
as a
John,
win.
and I love Lego. Yeah, there you go.
Is there any piece of advice that you kind of wish everyone knew? Having been through all the things you've been through and working on all the things you've worked on?
Uh, in what context? Within jiu-jitsu or just life?
Anything. Anything that you just wish
Okay.
everyone knew.
You know, patience is one thing I wish a lot of people knew. And again, like jiu-jitsu is the most patient sport I found. But growing up, like I had some teachers and some parents that weren't patient just because I learned a little bit differently and I acted a little bit differently, but that's just because like now we know it was learning disability. But yeah, like when it comes to life, jiu-jitsu, just be patient. Like don't overdo it. Don't try and like rush it. Understand other people. Like somebody might be having the worst day of their life. And if you just show them a little bit of kindness and patience, like they'll be okay. We got cops in my driveway. Sorry, fire thing still going on. It's great. It's crazy. Yeah, it's patience is one thing that I wish everybody would have a little bit more of. Like there's a lot of patient people, but like just have a little bit more. And I should also listen to my own advice because like I'm the world's angriest driver. Driving to and from Toronto every day is not fun. But I'm starting to get the hang of it. I'm starting to get a little more patient. Instead of my rock music, I'll listen to a podcast or an audio book, so that'll slow things down for me. Yeah, that's one thing I can give advice for is everybody should have a little more patience.
Does that kind of is that the role that jujitsu plays in your life these days? Is like reminding you of patience, giving you that kind of focus, and giving you that outlet, or does it play some other role for you these days?
It really does. It plays all those roles. It plays more. Like I said before, it's about getting my mind clear. Like I can have the stress from work, stress from life, the stress of driving from Toronto and in Toronto. Like I'm going to use Toronto as the bane of my existence right now, just because it is the worst place to drive. If you've ever driven anywhere with the worst traffic, times that by like five. That's Toronto traffic. It's the worst. So that's the bane of my existence is Toronto.
For me, that was always Atlanta. Atlanta and LA were the two worst traffics I'd ever been in. But the thing I like so much about Toronto is that it has a burrito district. Somebody told me like I need to go to the burrito district in Toronto, and I was like, it's amazing that a town has a burrito district. And I went there and I ate at like five different burrito places, and it's hard for me to dislike any place that has a burrito district.
See, I didn't even know about the burrito district. Now I got to look it up. You might have just saved Toronto for me because I love like Mexican food is my favorite, and any sort of burrito is a good burrito. So thank you for that. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what are you excited for in the future?
So in the future, I'm excited to continue with my learning, continue with my jujitsu, hopefully build my business. I plan on continuing my education. I want to open up my own school eventually. Like right now, I kind of have one that is in my buddy's basement. He teaches the wrestling, I teach the jujitsu, but I kind of want to have my own place. I want to share my knowledge and share the gift with like the gift of jujitsu with everybody. So that's what I want to do in the future. But yeah, like I just want to continue on the journey I'm going on because it hasn't been bad yet.
That's really nice. I like that jujitsu seems to create, not in everybody, but in a lot of people, like a very giving mindset. Like, hey, I profited so much from this emotionally, physically, situations, community, and now I want to give back. And I love that that's like a common theme amongst so many people who have trained.
Yeah, like our basement we train in, it's free. We just want people that are good people to come train with us. My buddy started it during COVID. Same idea. He had one training partner, two training partners. Then we allowed it that he brought into his house, and we kept it going. Like I met him around the end of COVID, and we became really fast friends through it. Like even was it Tuesday? Tuesday we just got together for just me and him to get some rounds in. But he shows his gifts of wrestling and judo. I show my gifts of jujitsu, and we share with people who we want to have it around us. Right? It's free. All we ask is that you're a good person and that you train hard with us. And that's something that like I can't do enough. Like I wish I could just teach for free. Right? I just want to share jujitsu with everybody because it changed my life so dramatically and drastically in the best ways possible that I never imagined when I was younger.
I love that. That's really beautiful that you get the opportunity to do it even on a small scale.
Yeah. Like we got about 7 or 8 of us that are regulars there and a couple more here and there. And everybody knows like just message us. Door's always open. Come on, train.
Well, that goes pretty clearly into the next question of, is there anything you'd like to promote? Sounds like that's one of those things. So can you give me a list of things you want to promote?
I'd like to promote like our gym. If you want to train with us, you're in the London area, give me a message. We'll have you out. I'd like to promote my business, Ethier Fitness.
That's London, Ontario.
Fitness. Yes, that's right. Not London, UK, not London anywhere else. London, Ontario, Canada. I also like to promote the gyms I go to. So I consider myself a nomad, but my main gym where I got my black belt is Mamouche Martial Arts in Oshawa, Ontario. Platinum BJJ here in London under Aaron. Fantastic place. We call it the Pigeons. The Pigeons are amazing. And the other gym I go to is Infinite Jiu-Jitsu in Brantford, run by my buddy Eric. Fantastic place if you're in the Brantford area. There's also the Rumble Academy in Brantford. Fantastic place as well. I think you already talked to Mr. Rumble, but
I did. I talked to Brian. It was a great conversation. Interesting fella.
He's like we talked about. He's the smartest person I've ever met. I cannot wait to watch that one. So yeah, I'm excited for that one.
John, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Eric. I love being here.
Thank you for listening. If you have any questions about becoming a trained conductor, if you struggle with learning disabilities on the mat and would like some advice from a black belt on overcoming them, or if you want help with a fitness program, please reach out to John. His contact information is in the show notes. If you find yourself near Ontario, Canada, you can look for John in any of the gyms that he trains at listed in the show notes as well. I hope you enjoyed our conversation as much as I did. And as always, thank you for your time and attention.